And it's not like the city. In the city, you know, the summers are pretty chill, restaurants close. We've just done the biggest 3 months of our lives and just, you know, feeling really good about the momentum and the feedback we're getting. And then 2 weeks later, gone.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep.
Throughout the series, we've spoken to professionals in the big cities or those running small regional restaurants heavily impacted by the pandemic. But what has life been like in the large regional centres that have a huge local community and rely on a swell of tourist trade in normal circumstances? Jason Saxby is the head chef of Raes on Wategos in Byron Bay. Jason, how are you going?
Good, Huck. How are you?
Good, mate. Thanks for joining us. What's it been like during the pandemic in Byron?
Look, it started off, it was a little bit, I think everyone was just a little bit fearful. It was a little bit crazy. And then, I don't know, life just seemed to just tick on. People kept surfing. There was still a lot of people around. It was just this little bubble of I think, its own little environment. And there was still tourists. And, you know, it was a completely different experience from what anyone else throughout the country I was speaking to was experiencing. So it's been a unique experience, but at the same time, I can't say it's all been bad. Certainly at the start, it was bad, and then, you know, as soon as the JobKeeper kicked in, and we had a little bit more idea about, you know, what we could do for our staff. I know we saw the optimism, we saw the positivity throughout the people, the community. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to Byron in winter, but it's a magical place. So it's been interesting, to say the least.
Well, certainly those in the food industry have been affected more so than other industries, particularly if you're talking restaurants. And I guess you would have felt that, and yet the environment you're in, by the sounds of it, didn't feel like a pandemic was going on. What did it feel like at that time when the restaurant was kind of forced into closure and yet society kind of felt like it was normal?
A bit unfair, but at the same time, I completely understood and maybe just thought maybe more could have been done for you know, not necessarily support, but circumstances where, you know, you go into Byron and you'll go to a little boutique clothes store and there's people everywhere. And then you'll go down the street and there's people everywhere and there's, you know, groups of people gathering and all that. And then, yeah, at the restaurant, we aren't allowed to do what we do every day, even though we could offer a completely controlled and safe environment as far as what the restrictions were saying. But there was nothing we could do about it. It was out of our hands completely.
Your restaurant is pitched above sort of everyday eats. It's more towards a finer dining sort of offering. What's been the impact on you guys because of a lack of tourists perhaps than normal?
Look, it is. We probably can break it down into different phases because, you know, it's not been the one situation throughout the whole epidemic. You know, like you've got the pre-COVID where the restrictions started coming in. We were massively impacted by that. Obviously, we are in a massive tourist destination, and within that, we're a boutique hotel, a high-end boutique hotel. So the cancellations, we pretty much went from being completely booked for the year to being completely unbooked, like zero. And through that, and that was within days. So obviously, we don't have automated systems where everything's, you know, we're not a big corporation. We have 2 people down in the office just having to field all of these calls and you know, try to rebook dates for a guesstimation of when normality would come back. And then the restaurant, obviously, the restaurant was just a complete wipeout. But it's been really weird for us because the hotel never actually had to close. The restrictions never filtered through to the actual hotel. Just by distinction, we just lost all of our bookings because no one could travel or no one wanted to travel. And it was just one of those weird things where there was the odd booking here or there that when we made the decision to close, we obviously had to cancel their reservations or their stay with us. But beyond that, it's been really weird because we're such a different business that we're a hotel with a restaurant rather than a restaurant with rooms. So the hotel was always sort of what made Raes, and the restaurant was just really gaining momentum in terms of making a name for itself outside of Byron. And yeah, it was just backtracking and trying to work out what the priority was. And, obviously that pre-COVID stage, no one knew anything. Every day we would come in with a new set of rules, a new set of guidelines from the morning briefing. I had a tape measure in my back pocket literally every single day, just measuring tables. And then got to the point of measuring the whole restaurant. So, we don't have a square restaurant. It's quite, there's little nooks and crannies everywhere. Measuring the square meterage, it just got to the point where we just couldn't work out what was going on. And then, you had that week of that, maybe 2 weeks of that. And then, we got 24 hours notice essentially to shut down and stop operations of a 60 staff team across, 3 different departments if you count housekeeping, restaurant and hotel. It's a big operation to just stop. And then you've got the phase after that, which was, pre-job seeker, where everyone's panicking. We employ a lot of international staff, predominantly international staff, who, we couldn't give them any answers on the day. The general manager, Francesca, sat down with each and every single staff member individually. I joined her for all the food and beverage people, and the department heads joined for their departments. And, just had to tell them pretty much that as of Monday, there was no work and there was no business, and we didn't know when or how or what anything was. And we're not alone in that. Every single establishment throughout the country had to go through that same thing. So I don't think we're unique in that, but I can vouch for everyone else that's been on one of these episodes that said that it was the worst day of their career. I can vouch for that. It makes you feel pretty crappy when you're looking at people that have given you their everything for, a year of just solid work, not taking time off because of the momentum we're gaining. And we'd just come off the back of a Byron summer, which, it's a whole beast of its own because there is just a lot of people around. And it's not like the city. In the city, the summers are pretty chill, restaurants close. We've just done the biggest 3 months of our lives and just, feeling really good about the momentum and the feedback we're getting, and then just sit them down 2 weeks later after just telling them, that's the end of the really busy season. You guys did amazing, but we're still booked out for the foreseeable future. Summer is continuing, and then 2 weeks later, gone. So really, that was a challenge.
As the restaurant opened up again, what opportunities arose for bringing some of those staff back, and what sort of business model did the restaurant move into?
So we have obviously the benefit of being a hotel. So we were very fortunate that our owners, I think, are in a position where they could help rather than just paying staff, obviously, to do nothing. This was, again, just before JobSeeker had kicked in. They were discussing about isolating. They're from Melbourne, so, they probably wanted to get out of the city as well, about isolating within the hotel. They've got quite a large family, so the family would take up the whole hotel, and it's a win-win because they could pay a certain amount of staff to basically operate the hotel, and their family would be cared for with food and housekeeping, and it really was an amazing gesture, and I feel very blessed that I'm one of the fortunate ones that gets to work within a company that was able to help their staff. At the same time, they got amazing food every day and they got amazing service. It was a great time.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, it was a win-win. And then when JobKeeper kicked in, then we sort of switched the people that were working to actually give some people that weren't eligible for JobKeeper or Job Seeker a little bit of work, rather than just paying, the heads of departments to look after people, or, the key staff. We sort of stepped aside and let some of the guys that were not eligible for anything to take over those roles. And that went on for, 5-6 weeks, I think, in total, maybe even a little bit more. I stepped aside because we were having our second child in May. So it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because, I've been head chef for nearly 9 years now, I think. And holidays just aren't holidays when you're, in charge. It's always emails, it's always phone calls, it's always still management meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So for the first time in my, senior career, I was able to switch my phone off and play with my son wholeheartedly for days. And, and then when Arlo was born, it was, really hands-on. It was I cannot take that back, you know what I mean? Like these are circumstances that just don't happen. I couldn't plan. I was planning on having 2 weeks off and then straight back to work, and I ended up having a month off after Arlo was born, and like a real month off. So I can't say it's all been negative. And then I had leave to get me through. So, we didn't really suffer too much as a family. If anything, we kind of benefited. Obviously at the start, there was that stress and panic of, if I lost my job, how would we survive? My wife was about to have a baby. We had just settled on our land up here. So we had just paid our deposit and paid a draftsman to draw house plans and submit to council. So we were just out of pocket, $70K of our life savings that took us a lot of years to save up. Like, I'm a chef, my wife's a nurse. That was our life savings. We had just literally at the end of February handed it all over. And then at the end of March, I may not have an income. And we're, staring down the barrel of rent and mortgage every week. And, again, this was before anything was sort of offered up as to assistance or anything. And there was panic and, about to have a baby. There was a lot of stress. We're like, do we sell the car? Do we do this? Just to give us that cushion. And luckily we held out because of the way my employers sort of handled that initial process. And it ended up being not too bad for us personally, but just obviously the toll the business takes in terms of, restarting essentially from scratch has been hard.
You just sort of mentioned that, it's been about 9 years that you've been a head chef of various venues and you never really got a holiday. And when you did have one, you're still attached to the job. But this period of time has given you some time out and a lot of time with the family. Has it changed the way you will have a work-life balance moving forward, having that glimpse and that window into that sort of life with your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my nearly 4-year-old son wouldn't let me go back to working the way I was, even if I wanted to. Like I can say, obviously, restarting it was a lot of hard work, but I can honestly say the business in which I am now I'm very fortunate that I do have work-life balance. I've been blessed with the ability to create a roster and a kitchen environment that is naturally, very positive to work-life balance. So I'm in Byron Bay. I can't stop people from surfing as much as I would like to. People don't move to Byron Bay to do 90 hours a week in a kitchen like, they might in the city. And even that, the industry's changing these days, isn't it? So we were already sort of, apart from the extra work that I put in to try to really, lift standards and sort of make a name for myself in Byron Bay and, take a restaurant that's 25 years old and try to reinvent it into the new era with new owners and new managers and everything like that. It was a lot of personal work, but at the same time, it wasn't a lot of physical work. It was more a lot of mental work that I could do at home and stuff like that. So I was already in this sort of nice balance of, working 50-50. So it was kind of good. I was doing less hours than I would have in the city, but, maybe more at home, which, is not a bad thing. I can't complain about that. Then, of course, when we reopened, we took that opportunity to make what we do better. I think that downtime really just highlighted a few things that were working or weren't working, highlighted the local community through, supporting it. We're already using a lot of local suppliers, but I think as, big food companies really stopped producing or stopped sending or stopped caring, it was always those little local guys that were there willing to drop off a last minute delivery or, willing to grow something that maybe you can't get. And it just kind of cemented that that's the right path forward. So it's changed more what we do now for the good. But also, since we reopened, like, Byron's having the winter of its life. Like, I've never seen more people in this area purely because they can't go anywhere else. So it's like now, like, it is booming up here. It is really, there's people that would normally be in Greece or Spain or, Positano, and they can't go there. So they're deciding to come as far north in New South Wales as they can. And luckily, Raes is one of those, I think, places and buildings that really just attracts people. It has that sort of coastal, sort of Italian/Spanish Mediterranean feel. So I think it's offering that escape from reality. So we've been very blessed in that, I think since reopening, our business model, albeit is a little bit tighter and, we're doing a few less covers. We just had to separate the seatings and, we're juggling things like every other restaurant is. But it's been the opposite for us where we're finding that, we have a massive wait list of people that want to dine with us that can't. Our hotel instantly booked back up for the rest of the year. Like, I think we've got a few spare nights here and there. And we just had this boom. And, at the start when we're doing 10 covers, we're doing degustation only. And, as were most businesses or are most businesses still to this day. And that was great. I don't enjoy doing the one thing over and over, so I got a bit bored. But it was still nice to be able to focus on quality and, offer those 10 people per seating this amazing experience where they're all guaranteed a window table, which, if you've ever dined at a restaurant with ocean views, it's, the food always tastes better, tastes worse at the back of the restaurant. Something's always wrong with something when you're on the end table. So to offer people the premium experience that you just can't guarantee on a day-to-day basis was amazing for us to sort of, show people the premium side of what we do, where, a place like Raes, sometimes you attract people that just want an ocean view and aren't necessarily, too involved in whether you are plastic free or whether you use organic produce or whatever. They, like, you've got to take the punches as they come. And I think post-COVID, well, it's not post really now, is it? But, post-reopening, it's just kind of separated the crowd a little bit. Or maybe people are just more appreciative to be out, that the vibe in the restaurant and the feedback from customers and the enjoyment of customers is just amplified, I think, because, 6 weeks at home eating, roast chicken and sourdough. Everyone ate sourdough, I swear. That was our national food for about 6 weeks. So I think people are really grateful to get out and eat food that's prepared, different to what you would prepare yourself. And we've had the opposite effect where, I've heard a lot of people on this show say that people want comforting food and they're going to switch and they're going to tone it back a bit. We had the opposite where people were ordering the truffles. People wanted the really nice bottles of wine. People wanted to experience something that they hadn't experienced in months. And, we're coming to Raes for that. So that's sort of, it's changed what we do now, is where we're like, well, if we're the premium restaurant in Byron, whether we want to be or not, people view it as that. So I think it's just given us a little bit more confidence to say, well, maybe we don't have to cater for that, 25% of people that come just for the view and to take a photo in front of the sign, like maybe we can be that extra step up and really polish what we do and offer a great experience for everyone.
Coming up after the break, Jason reveals the chefs that changed his life and tells us why Italian food is so important to him.
I absolutely love it, but I'm not Italian, which gives me that, I think, 2 degrees of separation where I don't feel bound by rules and traditions and, this old school thought that you can't do that because that isn't how it's done.
I was cutting off the hocks and I was just like, these are stunning. The marbling and the texture and the colour was just, it gets you excited to use and cook with those products because it looks so good.
The Crackling is the latest podcast from Deep in the Weeds, where we take you behind the scenes into the kitchens of Australia's best chefs.
If you do the kind of double cook with the spike in, it's crunchy, but like honeycomb almost, like glass, yeah.
And onto the farms of our nation's best producers.
Somebody came along and said, well, there's this opportunity back in Victoria and it was pig farming. That's sort of how we got into it, and it's been fantastic.
The stories, the passion, the produce.
It was a real life-changing moment for me to see, the respect of an animal that is so deep and such a part of a culture.
The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with Porkstar. Listen and subscribe to The Crackling now on your favourite podcast app. You've worked in some pretty extraordinary restaurants, and you've also got a really strong Italian sort of backbone with your cooking. You've worked at Pilu, and I think we met when you were at Russo and Russo, sort of making a name for yourself there. But you're not Italian, but what sort of food are you doing there, and why does Italian sort of weave through your food so much?
I think I'm from Bathurst. I'm sure you've been to Bathurst. Everyone's been to Bathurst at least once, usually for a race or driving through to get to somewhere better. I grew up in regional Australia, and I'm from Housing Commission. Like my mum, single mum, 4 boys. I'm the youngest. We grew up in what I would consider a very poor family in a very poor area. So my first foot inside a restaurant was when I was 16 or 17. I was taking my girlfriend out for a date, and we went to a schnitzel restaurant in Bathurst, as amazing as that sounds. And that was my first ever restaurant experience, like not even kidding. Like there was no food upbringing for me whatsoever. And there was no notable experience then either, don't worry. But I was in high school and I was doing hospitality because my mum told me I should learn how to cook because girls like men that can cook. Sound advice, absolutely sound advice. I still live by that to this day. And I was going to be an architect, anything to sort of improve my life choices. I love designing and creating and sort of building things. Went down the road of architecture. Sort of at the end of year 12, my school offered a course where you could sort of do industrial design and technology as an extra subject, and I did it and just realised I hated sitting down and sitting still and being inside all the time, just sitting at a desk. But loved the design and creativity, but didn't think too much of it. And then graduated high school in Bathurst. I got my HSC. I was the first one in my family to get my HSC because I felt I needed to do better and I really wanted to do better. So I pushed myself to get my HSC, and then I still end up in the kitchen. So, whatever. But I think that drive to get me out of Bathurst has sort of set my path because I was always looking elsewhere for inspiration. I was looking for that next step, and moved to Sydney and instantly started working for Alessandro Pavoni, who I credit for, actually teaching me how to cook. I thought I knew how to cook when I got to Sydney, but very quickly, within about 12 hours, learned I knew absolutely nothing. And you've seen Alessandro; he's not a small, friendly-looking character. So you took what he said seriously. You took it very seriously, and that was it. And then he's very passionate about Italian cuisine, in a modern sense. So it was really good to see that Italian food and that rustic sort of pasta that I always associated Italian food with being executed in a very modern, technically sound and elegant, refined way. So that was my introduction into Italian food. And then after about a year and a half, he was planning on leaving the Hyatt and decided that I should go before he left and go work for his mate Giovanni up in the Northern Beaches. And I'd never heard of Pilu and before sort of, this last 6 months. And then I just saw this building and I just fell in love, and then fell in love with Giovanni's passion for Sardinia and the regionality, and then again learnt that I knew nothing about Italian food and had to start again. And so, the first 4 years of me being in Sydney, 3.5 years of me being in Sydney was Italian food. And then obviously I dreamed of bigger and better things, went to Key, won the JP award, and then went overseas, and then, didn't think about Italian food for a couple of years. But then, I don't know, it was always there. It was always, I think, when you've had it drilled into you and, you've spent so much time cooking it and immersing yourself in that culture, because you can't really cook Italian food in an Italian restaurant without immersing yourself in that culture. It's too infectious, and the people that run those restaurants are too passionate that they won't let you just rock up to work, cook, and then leave. It's So that was always there, and then it just burst out of the seams when I got back to Australia. I couldn't resist.
How would you describe your interpretation of Italian cuisine? Like, how do you marry pasta shapes with sauces, or create spins on traditional dishes without ruining the traditional dishes?
Oh, look, it depends who you speak to. If you speak to a really traditional Italianist, I probably am ruining their food. But look, I'm an Aussie. I'm very proud of where I've come from and the ingredients that this country has. Without going on a rampage right now and boring everyone, but there is some amazing ingredients here. Maybe not an amazing food history that dates back, beyond what we've been told is our food heritage. We're starting to look into that deeper and deeper now as a people, thanks to people like Ben Shuri and Jock, who are really bringing that into restaurants. But it's just what I love to eat, and sort of the passion I have for Italian food and culture, and the knowledge, I suppose, I have, because I have spent now 10 of my 15 years cooking in Italian, 11 now because I got Raes, so 11 years of my 16 years cooking in Italian restaurants. I absolutely love it, but I'm not Italian, which gives me that, I think, 2 degrees of separation where I don't feel bound by rules and traditions and, this old school thought that you can't do that because that isn't how it's done. That no one can give a reason as to why you can't put parmesan with fish. No one can give a reason. It's just not done. So I'm not bound by those traditions. So I don't mind, respectfully taking the piss a little bit. And, I'll use some local ingredients, like, I don't even restrict myself to Australian. Like, I use Boonluck, and Palissa is, as you know, of Thai heritage. She grows a lot of Asian produce that I use because it's local, it's very good quality, and I get it to pick the dates picked out of the soil. So I'd be silly to not use, Chinese broccoli and these other things that, are so similar, and that I can put them in an Italian-ish dish, and it feels almost natural because I'm just replacing broccoli, So it's always done, what I love to cook is always done with respect and with a certain amount of care to not overstep the mark and to not, take the piss out of, thousands of years of culture and heritage. But at the same time, I don't feel bound to those traditions and laws. I really feel comfortable taking Australian ingredients, like I live in the Northern Rivers, and this area is just the epicenter of amazing produce. So like the climate here, the soil here, You know, it's where Davison plums come from. It's where macadamias come from. It's where finger limes come from, bunya nuts. Like all these things come from this region. So it would be stupid and I think irrespectful of me to overlook those ingredients. I won't, you know, get on a drum and bang that that's all I use or anything like that. But it is, I think, very respectful to this region and the community and the growers in this region to use that produce and to try to find ways to, you know, add it to Italian pastas without being really insulting.
Can you give us an example of a dish that may have started from inspiration from a traditional dish, but you've done a modern interpretation of it?
Yeah, look, on the menu right now, it's actually tomorrow's its last day on the menu, unfortunately, because I will not be getting any more mullet this year. But I've got a carbonara on the menu at the moment that is a completely seafood-based carbonara. In itself is nothing new, you know. There's versions of seafood carbonara spotted around the world in fine dining restaurants here and there, but I really just sort of looked at produce that I could get. Sustainability also plays a big part in it, and mullet. This is the best area for mullet. A lot of the mullet that's harvested here is taken just for the roe, which is sent to Sardinia and, you know, Sydney and all these other places to make the bottega. So the mullet is almost looked at as the byproduct of the bottega. So it started years ago at Pilu. I was speaking to fishermen about trying to get them to, you know, respect the mullet and to treat it well and to send it to me down at Pilu. And we put on a dish at Pilu. Like, I'm pretty sure a 2-8 restaurant hasn't served mullet for a while. And that's when it sort of started, when you can get these fish that are often talked about as bait fish or, you know, waste fish, sent pet food or exported somewhere, and you get someone to really treat them with respect and care, and then you really treat them with respect and care, it really does elevate that fish into premium fish. There's absolutely nothing wrong with mullet. So we cure and smoke it as if you would like a piece of pork or something like that. We treat it with the same respect as you would any other protein, and then we rend it off in a pan and we make a carbonara completely traditional, no cream ever. And we do it with a local pecorino made by Deb Allard. We use it with Tasmanian pepper that is grown in the area, or if we can't get that, we use pepper from Piccone Exotics, which is like a farm up here, and he does his own black pepper. And we do a completely seafood carbonara. So, and because of the way we've handled that mullet, it tastes so like the real thing. It doesn't taste like a fishy seafood carbonara. We're not using sea urchin, so it has this, you know, amazing salinity and oceanic flavor. It has a meaty flavor. So we sometimes don't tell people that it's a seafood carbonara, and they eat it and go, wow, that's amazing. You're like, that's completely pescatarian. And they're shocked and amazed. And then, you know, it goes beyond that. And then we, instead of doing preserved lemon, we do preserved desert limes. Just little, you know, simple techniques that you would associate with, you know, Italian or Mediterranean cuisine. You can very easily impart them onto native ingredients or local ingredients that are of, you know, Asian descent, but grown by Boonluck without it seeming too disrespectful.
A little earlier, you mentioned that there's been many restaurants thinking that comfort food will be the key to moving forward post-COVID. And the experience you've had is that people really want to live their best lives as soon as possible, and they want the truffles and all the things that they were missing out on in life. Where do you see the finer dining sort of side of the industry in the next couple of years?
Oh, look, the next couple of years are going to be tough, aren't they? Like, I don't think we've really seen the full brunt of the aftermath of this epidemic. I don't think we've really seen, you know, the full effect on our industry. I think that's still definitely coming. I think there'll be some operators that are hanging on, you know, through JobKeeper or other things like that, and the full realities will kick in, you know, when life sort of starts opening back up again, or this second wave, especially in Victoria. I think we haven't really seen the full effect yet. You know, we're just getting the start of it now. But look, I think fine dining will always be there. There will always be a sense of occasion around quality restaurants. I think a lot of restaurants tried to be fine dining that necessarily didn't execute it very well. Just had lots of tablecloths and people in suits, but didn't really necessarily offer an experience above, a casual restaurant. They just sort of had a fancier surrounding. That isn't fine dining. Like true fine dining restaurants, I think there'll always be a part for those. There'll always be the people that really want to splurge, and there'll always be the people that want to just feel that, like it's just a feeling you have when you're in a restaurant, and the rest of the world disappears. Like you sit down at a table at Key, or at one of those at another top restaurant, and all of a sudden the world doesn't exist anymore. Only what's around you. It's a fully immersive experience, and that will always have a place. I think there is a need for so many of them who perhaps don't execute it as well, and those restaurants will probably be the ones that fall by the wayside. But the mid-tier, I think, is where Australia has already, I suppose, made its name. Is that perhaps a casual restaurant with exceptional food. I think Sydney and Melbourne are doing that exceptionally well, where you will get 3 Michelin star or 2 Michelin star trained chefs executing food of an exceptional standard, just with a very casual setting. I think that's what Australia's food scene is internationally recognised for now. But look, there'll always be that top tier. There always needs to be that top tier, because 90% of the time that's where the inspiration comes from. Like that's where little chefs dream of working for. Like if you take that away, you take away the future of the industry. So it's always going to be there.
A little earlier, you mentioned that although there's been some tough experiences, it's not all been bad. What's been the positives that you can take out of this period of time?
Look, I think a chance that, I've never spoken to a chef, an ambitious chef that takes time off and, stops. It just doesn't happen. So I think it's a forced break, especially for chefs that aren't business owners. I'm sure business owners have had their hands full throughout this as well, but I think it's just a time to stop and look at this industry as a whole, and hopefully we can take what's working and move it forward and look at what isn't working in this industry. Like, people have been talking about it for years. I think this last sort of 4 or 5 months has only amplified the things that aren't work. Like a business shouldn't have to close in a day and then literally already be broke. Like why are we running businesses that don't have any cushion to sort of get you through that next week or two to sort of until something comes along? Like I think as a whole, I really do hope this country can look at the industry, and governments / other bodies and all that can look at this industry and see it for how important it actually is. It is, it's like there's a lot of other important industries, but where do those industries go? They go to restaurants. Like restaurants are the meeting places. It's where life happens. Some of your best memories are created in restaurants, or your best moments in life are celebrated in restaurants. You need them. They're part of our culture. So I really hope that we can work out a way to make it a more sustainable and viable industry and future for people, because there's some incredible talent that may never get the opportunity to own a restaurant because of the challenges that you face, not only opening and setting up a restaurant and the costs it takes, but the risk in running it like on a day-to-day basis. It's just been amplified at the moment, hasn't it?
You're absolutely right. And what you said about memories, restaurants are just so wonderful for creating those. And as you know, when you're at your time at Russo and Russo, you created some memories for my wife and I as we lived around the corner. We had some extraordinary meals there. Mate, it's so good to hear you doing well up there at Raes, and really loved having you on the program today. Keep in touch, and hopefully I get out of this freezing cold Canberra. It was -5 this morning soon, and up there where the sunshine is, and enjoy your food again.
I hope so too. -5 sounds horrible. It's been, I think, 23, 24 today. I was at the beach, but I won't rub that in.
Thank you.
I'd love to see you again.
Thanks, Jason. Talk soon.
Cheers, Huck. Speak soon, mate. See ya.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.